Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I did a video a few days ago that's gotten a lot of questions, and it was the one that I did on the new Berkley triple minnow rig. This is a contraption that is unlike anything else that I've ever fished. I really thought when I got it, it was going to remind me a lot of an umbrella rig. It wasn't like an umbrella rig at all. You have a lot more versatility that goes into this triple minnow rig than you would with an umbrella rig. And because it's a different contraption, I had a whole bunch of questions from you guys out there on that video that I did. So I thought I would try to address a bunch for you. So first off, right off the bat, I did have people ask me if you can only buy it in a kit. Well, the triple minnow rig itself comes in this boxing, and it's got kind of a booklet front on it. So when you open it up, what you'll see is you get several minnows, several of the Berkley drip minnows. You get some of the Fusion 19 hybrid jig heads in various sizes. And then you'll get the harness in it itself. And then with that comes instructions as to how to rig it. It definitely does require you to look at the instructions the first time. Once you know how to do it one time, it's a really simple rig to set up. And there's really, from what I saw, no right or wrong way to fish it. Now in the instructions, it says to shake the rod tip while slowly retrieving, being sure to keep a slight bow in your line, which was a great way to get your minnows to have an S-swim motion in the water. Very natural, lifelike movement. But I found that you could fish it almost any way. You could burn the reel handle and kill it. You could give it a lot of quick little jerks. You really could mix it up and fish it almost any way you wanted to. So even though the booklet tells you to fish it with your rod tip up, small shakes, do not be afraid to experiment with the retrieves. One of the other questions that I got, so this is the harness itself. I just put it together. I have not fully squeezed it all into place, but this is basically the harness. Your line goes through here, comes out the bottom, you tie a jig head on here, and then you have two minnows that you just screw onto the hitchhikers, and you've got a 3 minnow rig. One question I had was when you squeeze down on the stop cap, which locks it into place, does that push on the tubing so much that it could kink your line? From what I saw, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Now, if you really wanted to take pliers and squeeze it together, it's possible that maybe you could kink your line to the point where it could damage it. From what I saw, it holds your line just enough to keep the contraption all tight in place, but at the same time there were times where it would slide. If you caught a fish, it might slide up your line a little bit. I did evaluate my line afterwards, looking to see if there was any kinking. I saw no damage to my line. Now that doesn't mean though, if you squeeze that down to the point where you're never going to be able to get it off, potentially it could kink your line. Now I was using it on 15-pound fluorocarbon. I think you could throw it in even lighter if you wanted. I think you could go down to 6 or 8 pound test and make a really finessey rig. I think at the same time you could probably go up the other way and fish it on heavy braid if you wanted to do that too. But I did not see any damaging of the line. I also got questions regarding the tubing. When you pull the tube, when the tubing is slid down, you have a jig head right here. Is there concern that the tubing could damage the knot? I don't think that would be the case at all. In fact, I actually almost look at it the other way around and say with a contraption like this, if you happen to be fishing around cover or places that have toothy critters like muskie and pike, I actually think the tubing could give you a little bit of added protection against those sharp teeth. But the tubing itself is a tubing that I use with a lot of different techniques in the fishing industry to either stretch my line out or to protect knots, and I don't think you'd have any issue from that standpoint damaging the knot itself. The contraption held up really well overall. Now I will say I did get a little kink in my tubing after catching a bunch of fish. But having said that, they provide you with, what do you get, a couple extra pieces of tubing. So once you do pull it off, if you have a kink in the tubing or you want to just put it on a different rod and use one that isn't kinked, they give you some extra ones. I didn't find that kink in the tubing was anything to be a major concern about. you are able to kind of re-straighten it back out. So from that standpoint, I never really had any issues with it. But I do think after a full day's worth of fishing, is there potential you might have to change the tubing out? I do think that could be the case. But at the same time, this is tubing that you can buy extremely cheap at any like medical facility, or a lot of your science stores have tubing like it. That's where I end up getting most of mine. You can get it online too, all over the place, and buy it for pennies per foot. Let's put it that way. Super cheap. Overall, it looked great from a setup standpoint. One other thing that I thought was kind of interesting, when I rigged it up, you know, the contraption arms are actually stiffer than the tubing. And from that standpoint, I kind of was like, well, I'm surprised the arms aren't down more to make the minnows be more in line. But they really just kind of fold over a little bit in the water. So in this case, if you're retrieving it, the jig head minnow will be down here, and these two arms will be where your weightless heads are. So there's part of me that does wonder if these hitchhikers would be better off turned to the side, but I don't know that that would be the case, because in the water they actually lay down a little bit, and they just create an amazingly lifelike minnow action, as you guys have seen in the videos. Overall, really good. I do think there's going to be a major learning curve for anglers to figure out where's the best places to fish that. You know, I know on the box they talk about it being a really good minnow style bait for forward-facing sonar. No doubt it will be very good with that. I fished it without having forward-facing sonar in my boat. In fact, I didn't even have a depth finder on my boat that day. I also think it could be an amazingly good bait for fishing deep, around deep humps. You know, you could put probably a 3/4 ounce jig head or a 1 ounce jig head on that, get it down really deep, and fish it for fish that are near the bottom, ledge fishing on like TVA style lakes. I caught a lot of fish waking it on the surface. It looked really good doing that. I don't know that there's a wrong way to fish it, to be honest with you. I just think most game fish are going to be interested in it. You saw in that video I caught a bunch of crappies, and that was with the 4-inch minnow. So I'm sure if you drop down to the 3-inch minnow, you could really do well on your perch and your crappie. It'll be interesting to see how this bait is implemented into a lot of anglers' overall fishing strategies, because I do think it'll be good. I am curious. I am still waiting to hear if it'll be legal, though, in some of the tournaments, the professional level tournaments that I fish. There's pretty specific rules that talk about only being able to use one bait. And in this case, there's only one hooked bait, but there's a couple of teaser baits. So I'm not sure how that's going to come into play. I'll have to get clarification on that. From a regulation standpoint, I would recommend checking in your local states, but for the most part, I think it's probably legal in pretty much every state that I can think of offhand. Don't quote me on that. Do your own research when it comes to your state regulations. But if you're fishing things like the Alabama rig, you're for sure going to be okay to go. Anyways, I hope that provides a little bit of clarification. I do think you know, you can experiment with other minnow style baits, other style baits in general. The drip minnow looked phenomenal on there. It worked great. But if you wanted to try things like a straight tail worm, a curly tail grub, things like that, I think that could look good on there too. I'll be interested to see how those play out. I also think you could potentially even swap out that bottom bait for an actual bottom bait, like a football jig, and drag something down. You might get more bites on the teasers at that point, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of different scenarios where this contraption could come into play. So I'll be really curious to get the feedback from you guys out there in YouTube world that have tried it or are going to try it, and the baits that you think have worked really well on it, the places you're fishing it, the times of year that you're fishing it. I'm excited to see what everyone has to say with this. But I wanted to do just a little bit more of a close-up look at it, kind of answer some of the questions that I got, because I did get a lot of questions. One of the other ones that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head too, I had people ask me if you had to throw on bait casting gear, if you could throw it on spin gear. I think, again, that comes down to how you want to fish it and the size of the jig heads that you're fishing, the size of the baits. I used it on bait casting gear. It was a 7.3 medium heavy fast action, kind of an all-purpose rod. worked great on there. Wasn't too heavy, wasn't too light, but at the same time, I feel like you could easily swap that over to spinning gear if you wanted to use it, maybe a little lighter jig head or a little smaller minnows. Ultimately, I think it's going to come down to the angler as to how they want to fish it and how heavy of a tackle they want to fish it on. Pretty cool setup. The triple minnow rig by Berkley. Highly recommend checking it out. I think it's one of those baits that is just fun to fish with. It just was cool to see in the water, as you guys saw in my video. So let me know if you've got additional questions. If I didn't answer them all, throw it in the comment section. I will get to you and try to get you an answer regarding that. Otherwise, I appreciate all of you watching. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.